Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to break down the big headlines, giving you the context you need to understand what's really going on.
Absolutely, taking you beyond the surface level.
Today is April 30th, 2025, and we've got a lot happening in India, from thrilling cricket action to some pretty serious geopolitical developments and even some cultural shifts.
It's a packed agenda for sure.
So let's jump right in. First up, the IPL. Always exciting. Yesterday's match between Kolkata Knight Riders and Delhi Capitals.
Wow. Yeah, really close one. Went down to the wire almost.
KKR pulled off a 14-run win, and Sunil Narine was just, well, everywhere. He smashed 27 runs first.
Crucial runs at the end really boosted their total to 204.
Right, and then with the ball, 3 for 29, absolutely instrumental.
Vintage Narine performance, wasn't it? Experience counts in these pressure cookers.
Totally. And we can't forget Andre Russell's monster. 106 meters, the crowd went wild.
Oh, yeah. Those moments are what the IPL is all about. Sheer power.
There were some amazing catches, too, and even a bit of drama with an unusual review on a runout.
Keeps you on the edge of your seat.
So this win pushes KKR up to 9 points. Big for their playoff hopes.
Definitely. Every win is gold at this stage.
But for Delhi Capitals, even though they're still fourth with 12 points, that's their third loss at home. That's got to hurt.
It does. Home advantage is usually so important. They'll need to figure that out.
Yeah.
You see players like Narine, the seasoned pros, really stepping up when the stakes are high.
Yeah, exactly.
Their ability to deliver under pressure, both with bat and ball,
Yeah.
often makes a difference. It lifts the whole team, you know. Not just the points, but the morale, too.
Right, that psychological edge. Okay, let's shift gears now to something much more serious. Tensions between India and Pakistan.
A significant escalation.
Following that horrific attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd, where 26 civilians died, Pakistan is now claiming it has credible intelligence.
Intelligence about what, specifically?
That India is planning an imminent military strike, maybe within the next 24 to 36 hours, using the Pahalgam attack as sort of the justification.
And Islamabad's response.
They vowed a decisive response if anything happens. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi met with his security chiefs.
Okay.
And reports say he's given the military complete operational freedom. He's also pledged to track down and punish those behind the attack.
So, strong words from both sides.
Yeah.
Any actual incidents?
Yeah, there have been reports of gunfire across the line of control in Kashmir. And diplomatic expulsions, too.
So the situation is definitely heating up on multiple fronts.
Absolutely. The international community, U.S., China, Iran, they're all calling for restraint. The UN's even offered to mediate.
Which is standard procedure in these situations, but rarely easy.
And Pakistan's PM Sharif reiterated they'll defend their sovereignty. It all plays out against that long, complex history of Kashmir, contested since '47.
Right. And the ongoing insurgency since the late 80s just adds layers of complexity.
Yeah.
These claims of credible intelligence, you have to see them in context.
How so?
Well, it's often part of strategic messaging, right? It could be signaling, deterrence, diplomatic posturing. It's hard to verify independently.
I see.
But the international calls for restraint show just how worried everyone is. We're talking about two nuclear-armed neighbors here. Any escalation has huge regional implications.
A very tense situation indeed. Okay, let's move to something different, a cultural highlight from Delhi.
Good, a change of pace.
The Delhi Art Gallery, Daggy, has an exhibition called A Treasury of Life, Indian Company Paintings. It covers the period from around 1790 to 1835.
Company paintings. Interesting genre.
Exactly. These were works by Indian artists, but commissioned by European patrons, mostly linked to the British East India Company.
Right, documenting a specific time and interaction.
The exhibition focuses on 3 main themes: natural history, flora and fauna, then architecture, and finally, Indian manners and customs.
A really broad scope.
Yeah, you have patrons like Lady Mary Impey focusing on natural history, Claude Martin encouraging that too, then paintings from the Murshidabad school showing early British architecture in Bengal.
So it's this fascinating mix of Indian techniques and European interests and perspectives.
Precisely. It's a visual record of India's biodiversity, its changing architecture, daily life. And they highlight this guy, James Forbes,
Oh, yeah.
a Scottish writer who came to India when he was just 16, stayed 18 years, sketching and writing about everything he saw. A lot of his work is in the exhibit.
Wow, incredible. That firsthand observation is invaluable.
The DAG CEO, Ashish Anand, calls these paintings a crucial bridge between traditional Indian art and early modern styles. The show runs until July 5th.
These paintings are more than just art. They're historical documents. They show us the cultural exchange, the power dynamics, the scientific curiosity of the time.
How the shift in patronage changed things.
Exactly. Moving away from the traditional courts to these East India Company officials and Europeans. It tells you a lot about the social and scientific interests shaping art back then.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, back to the India-Pakistan dynamic, but from an economic angle this time.
Right, the economic pressure.
So, after suspending the Indus Water Treaty post-Pahalgam, India is now apparently targeting indirect trade routes.
Routes through third countries, you mean?
Yeah, like Dubai, Singapore, Colombo. India is still blaming Pakistan for the attack, which Pakistan denies, of course, though TRF initially claimed it.
TRF, linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba. Always murky.
So, the plan seems to be to get these intermediary countries to block Indian goods being transshipped to Pakistan.
How significant is that indirect trade?
Pretty big, apparently over $10 billion a year. Includes essentials like food, pharmaceuticals, sugar.
Wow, okay. So hitting essentials too.
Reports suggest Indian exporters might even be asked not to sell to traders known to re-export to Pakistan. But that's hard to enforce, isn't it?
Extremely hard. You're dealing with private companies, international hubs, goods getting relabeled in bonded warehouses.
Yeah.
It gets complicated and often just drives up costs.
Right, they mentioned auto parts being relabeled as an example. Interestingly, despite direct trade limits, India's exports to Pakistan actually surged 127% in 2024.
To $1.21 billion.
Yeah.
That's quite a jump.
Yeah, including $208 million in pharma last fiscal year. Pakistan's exports to India, though, have plummeted since 2019 because of tariffs.
A very skewed trade relationship then.
Definitely. And this is alongside the diplomatic downgrades, airspace closures, direct trade bans we already see. India says it's about countering terrorism and promoting regional security.
Well, economic leverage is a standard tool in these situations. Targeting indirect routes is complex, as we said. Its effectiveness is debatable.
And the impact.
It could certainly put pressure on Pakistan's economy, but you also risk impacting the supply of essential goods for ordinary people. Given the trade imbalance, India clearly holds significant economic leverage here.
A complex tool with potential side effects. Okay, let's shift to international trade more broadly. The U.S. Special 301 report is out.
Ah, yes, the annual intellectual property review.
And India is still on the priority watch list.
Not unexpected, perhaps. That's been the case for a while.
The report calls India one of the most challenging major economies for IPR, alongside China, Indonesia, Russia.
What are the specific complaints this year?
Similar themes: patent issues, revocations, discretionary criteria delays, concerns about how the Indian Patents Act is interpreted, finding it vague.
The patentability criteria, particularly for pharmaceuticals, has long been a point of friction.
Right. Also, high customs duties on IP-heavy goods like medicines, IT stuff, solar equipment. And then there's enforcement, or lack thereof.
Counterfeits and piracy?
Yeah, counterfeit medicines, online piracy, file sharing, signal theft. And still no strong legal protection for trade secrets.
It's a recurring theme.
They also mentioned concerns about mandatory source code disclosure for telecom gear.
Okay. Does the report acknowledge any progress?
It does mention some positives, like the specialized IPR benches in courts and some patent rule amendments. But it pushes for comprehensive trade secret laws and much stronger enforcement against fakes and piracy.
So, being on the priority watch list, what does that actually mean for India?
Well, it signals ongoing U.S. dissatisfaction.
It can impact trade negotiations, potentially deter some foreign investment, especially in IP-sensitive sectors like tech and pharma. It really reflects differing views on balancing innovation, access particularly to medicines and international IP standards.
A persistent balancing act. Okay, let's move to the corporate world. News from Infosys.
What's happening there?
They've reportedly terminated 195 trainees at their big Mysuru campus.
For what reason?
Failing internal assessments. Apparently they got 3 tries in time to prepare but didn't meet the standards.
It sounds tough. Is this unusual?
Well, it follows another round just 10 days earlier where 240 trainees were let go for similar reasons.
So a pattern. What support are they getting?
Infosys is offering a separation deal, 1 month salary, relieving letter, and an option for a 12-week training program in business process management, BPM.
Okay, so an alternative pathway, potentially.
Yeah. Infosys emphasizes its high standards, and that Mysuru campus is huge, a massive training operation.
It definitely highlights the pressure cooker environment in the IT sector, especially for fresh graduates.
Absolutely. Bridging that gap between academics and corporate demands. And it comes amid broader talk about optimization and layoffs in tech.
These companies are under immense pressure to stay efficient. Training programs are key, but clearly the standards are rigorous. Offering BPM training might be Infosys trying to channel these individuals into roles where they see a better fit or immediate need.
Makes sense, adapting the workforce. Now, a story involving academia and geopolitics. Harvard University is facing some backlash
Oh, about what?
for hosting top Pakistani officials at its South Asia Institute pretty soon after that Pahalgam attack.
Timing is everything. Who raised concerns?
Indian students at Harvard, they objected to giving a platform to officials from a government accused of backing terror groups, especially so soon after the attack. Remember, TRF initially claimed it.
Right, even though they later retracted it.
Two students wrote letters to Harvard leadership and also to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemning the event.
What was their main argument?
That Harvard shouldn't host representatives of a state allegedly enabling terrorism targeting civilians based on religion, and they called for Harvard to denounce the attack.
Who are the officials involved?
Pakistan's Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb and Ambassador Rizwan Syed Sheikh. The event was apparently organized by Pakistani students, with Harvard providing logistical support. The institute's executive director was on a panel.
So Harvard's direct involvement was maybe limited but still present.
Right. And interestingly, Harvard later removed the event details from its website. The title was The Enlightened Muslim, Examining the Intersection of Religion, Modernity, and State Formation in Pakistan. No official comment from Harvard on why they removed it.
This really highlights that classic tension, doesn't it? Academic freedom versus geopolitical sensitivities.
Definitely.
Universities want to foster open dialogue, but hosting controversial figures, especially after a tragedy, is bound to raise difficult questions about perceived endorsement or impact on affected communities. It's a tough line to walk.
Indeed. Okay, let's turn to the Supreme Court of India and the Pegasus spyware issue.
Still ongoing, that case.
Yes. The court is dealing with petitioners who want the report from the court-appointed investigation committee released.
The committee that looked into allegations of politicians, journalists being spied on?
That's the one. The government, meanwhile, keeps saying it won't comment on anything touching national security or sovereignty.
Standard government line in these cases. What did the committee actually find?
According to reports, no conclusive evidence of widespread misuse, but they did suspect interception in a few cases.
So not a clear exoneration, but not proof of mass surveillance either.
Right. Petitioners argue for transparency, release the report, maybe redact sensitive bits, but the court seems resistant, citing security risks.
Understandable caution, perhaps.
Solicitor General Tushar Mehta argued that people involved in terrorism or disrupting public order don't have the same privacy rights.
A controversial legal argument.
The court floated an idea. Maybe verify individual hacking claims mentioned in the report, but don't make the whole report public.
Trying to find a middle ground.
It boils down to that fundamental clash, privacy versus national security. Petitioners also raised international concerns, like a U.S. court order mentioning a WhatsApp hack.
Bringing in the global context of spyware use.
But the Indian Supreme Court seems focused on India's security needs right now.
It's a classic dilemma. How far can surveillance go in the name of security? Where's the line? The judiciary plays a crucial role here, but finding that balance is incredibly difficult, legally and ethically.
A debate that's far from over. Now for some brighter economic news, luxury retail in India.
Seeing some growth there.
Significant growth. Leasing activity for luxury retail space jumped 90% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2025. That's huge.
90%? Wow,
Yeah.
What's driving that?
Global and domestic luxury brands are just piling in, expanding aggressively in major cities, and rentals are going up as a result.
Any specific examples?
Yeah, new entries like Clock 2, the high-end German clocks, Jacquetti Paris for kids' fashion, Nespresso coffee. Plus, existing brands like Breitling are expanding.
So across different luxury segments.
Exactly. The bridge to luxury segment, like beauty and accessories, is also doing really well. DLF is even creating a dedicated luxury zone in a Delhi mall.
That signals real confidence in the market.
A key driver is the number of high-income households earning over $40,000 a year, expected to double from 15 million in 2022 to 30 million by 2030.
That's a massive increase in potential customers.
Bain & Company thinks the whole market could hit $85–90 billion by 2030. Brands like Vivienne Westwood, Franck Muller are also boosting their presence.
So India is really emerging as a key luxury market in the region.
Definitely. Driven by rising spending power, not just in the biggest cities, but tier 2 cities as well.
It reflects rising disposable incomes, changing consumer aspirations. That demographic shift, the doubling of high-income households, is absolutely fundamental. Luxury brands clearly see long-term potential in India's economy.
A sign of growing affluence, at least for some segments. Now, let's revisit the Pahalgam attack from April 22nd with some more disturbing details that have emerged.
Okay, what more have we learned?
Reports say 5 militants, heavily armed AK-47s, M4 carbines, dressed in military gear. They specifically targeted non-local civilians, mostly Hindu tourists, in the Bayasaran Valley during peak season.
Horrific. We know 26 were killed, many injured.
The methods were chilling. Eyewitnesses say they separated men and women, asked for names, religions, forced men to remove trousers to check for circumcision.
A deliberate, brutal targeting based on religious identity.
Those identified as Hindus were shot, some at close range, others apparently with sniper-like precision. And they reportedly filmed the attack with helmet cams.
Just barbaric. The psychological terror aspect is clear.
We mentioned TRF's initial claim and retraction. The focus now is on Hashim Musa, allegedly a former Pakistani para-commando with LET as the orchestrator, sent specifically to target civilians and security forces.
The alleged involvement of former military personnel adds another disturbing layer.
Naturally, there's been nationwide outrage, heightened India-Pakistan tensions, PM Modi's security meeting granting operational freedom. We covered that.
And the political fallout?
A bit of back and forth. Congress made a Gayab missing jibe at Modi on social media. BJP fired back, accusing Rahul Gandhi of siding with Pakistan. Congress later deleted the post.
Predictable political point scoring, unfortunately, even amidst tragedy. These details really underscore the calculated cruelty involved. Targeting civilians based on religion, the filming, it's designed to maximize fear and inflame tensions. The alleged link to a former Pakistani commando just complicates the already fraught security situation.
A truly grim picture. Okay, let's broaden the lens again to India's overall economic health. Government assessments are flagging some risks.
Risks to the growth story, despite being the fastest growing major economy.
Exactly. IMF projects 6.2%, ADB 6.7% for 2025. But global trade tensions and geopolitical instability are seen as mounting threats.
Primarily impacting exports.
Yes, the finance ministry notes potential disruption to merchandise exports, though they think services exports will hold up better. Geopolitical rivalries reshaping trade blocs. That's both a risk and maybe an opportunity for India.
If India can position itself smartly, perhaps, but domestic challenges remain too, right?
Definitely. Food inflation is still high, over 8%. Job growth is stagnant in places. Infrastructure projects face delays.
Structural issues that need addressing.
The IMF actually cut India's FY 2026 forecast slightly to 6.2%, citing trade wars and global uncertainty.
So external headwinds are a real concern.
On the upside, there's that potential U.S.-India trade deal aiming for $500 billion by 2030. Pressure's on to get that done by mid-2025.
That could be a significant boost if it happens.
But India needs 8% plus annual growth to hit that developed nation goal by 2047. Slowing momentum or reform fatigue are risks. Manufacturing exports look promising, electronics, pharma, but KPMG warns about rising global protectionism.
Over 3,000 trade interventions last year alone. Businesses need to be flexible.
So the government's pushing export diversification and domestic reforms?
Look, India's growth is strong, but it's not operating in a vacuum. Global slowdowns, trade wars, geopolitical shocks, they all pose real risks, especially to exports. Building resilience through diversification and tackling those domestic structural issues like inflation and infrastructure bottlenecks is absolutely key to sustaining that high growth needed for the 2047 target.
A complex path ahead. Finally, a couple of stories reflecting social commentary in India today. First, a viral video.
Oh.
An Australian content creator, Bree Steele, posted on Instagram about India's house help culture.
The prevalence of domestic workers, always a topic of discussion.
She noted how common it is for middle and upper class families in India to have help for cooking, cleaning, etc., unlike in Australia where most people juggle jobs and all the housework.
A significant cultural difference.
She admitted she barely cooks or cleans anymore, felt a mix of convenience and guilt. But she also observed many Indians still seem to lack work-life balance despite the help.
Interesting observation.
Her video, kind of lighthearted, sparked a huge debate. Some defended the practice, citing dust. lack of appliances, cultural norms like hand-washing clothes.
Practical considerations from their perspective.
Others were critical, talking about dependence on cheap labor, questioning workers' rights, and fair treatment.
The ethical dimension.
People who've lived both in India and abroad chimed in with nuanced views. It really touched on affordability, worker support systems, and the ethics of using cheap labor.
It's a conversation rooted in deep socioeconomic history and the realities of the informal labor market in India. While providing convenience, it does raise valid questions about equity, fair wages, working conditions, and shifting social norms.
A complex social dynamic. And lastly, a story that really seemed to hit a nerve, especially with urban professionals.
What's this one?
A Bengaluru techie, earning a pretty good joint income, 60 lakh annually with his wife, posted on Reddit asking if living in India is actually worthwhile.
Despite the good income, what were his complaints?
Daily struggles with poor infrastructure in his area, Horamavu. He mentioned terrible traffic, constant unfinished construction, unreliable basic services.
The infamous Bengaluru infrastructure woes.
He gave an example, a 3-kilometer commute taking 40 minutes, said he felt drained before even starting work, criticized the lack of accountability for perpetually dug-up roads.
Frustrations many urban Indians can relate to, I imagine.
He then compared India's high tax rate, he figured 30–40% for them, with countries like Canada or Germany, arguing taxpayers there get tangible benefits like healthcare, better infrastructure.
Whereas in India,
He felt Indian taxpayers get little back, no free healthcare, decent public education isn't guaranteed, even reliable water is an issue. So he questioned the value proposition.
basically asking, what am I paying all these taxes for?
Exactly, and it sparked a massive online conversation about quality of life, governance, value for taxes paid. Some worried it fuels brain drain skilled workers leaving.
A valid concern.
The techie himself sounded conflicted, wanting to contribute to India but feeling the system works against the working class.
His experience really encapsulates a critical challenge for India, ensuring economic progress translates into better quality of life for citizens. Infrastructure, governance, reliable public services, these aren't luxuries, they're essential. When people, especially high earners paying significant taxes, feel they aren't getting basic amenities in return, it raises fundamental questions about the social contract and can impact decisions about where to build a life.
A powerful personal perspective reflecting broader anxieties. And that wraps up our deep dive for today. We've covered a lot from the IPL buzz.
The serious geopolitical tensions, economic shifts, IP debates, corporate moves, cultural discussions, and these very real individual experiences.
It really shows the sheer dynamism and complexity of India right now. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. When you see the boom in luxury retail happening alongside the frustrations of someone like that Bengaluru techie struggling with basic infrastructure, what does progress truly mean, and who's experiencing it?
A crucial question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some valuable context behind the headlines.